To draw the butt, you first want to start off with a rectangle for the pelvis, split the pelvis in half, and then you want to think of the butt like a butterfly. So you have the sacrum triangle, sacral triangle right here, and then you have the wings dropping out like this. Now this is the butt from the back view, straight on, and you'll see that it has this kind of shape, right? Like a butterfly shape. And then let's bring in a little bit of anatomy. We'll have a little bit of a circle right here for the great trochanter. And then we'll have the front part of the legs dropping down. And here are the legs bringing down. So we have this kind of tire butterfly shape like this for the main butt. Now let's go into the actual anatomy a little bit and also the movement. How does the butt move? How do the legs and things rotate and move around? So if we flip this over to the front view and we have our rectangle planned out, we want to block out the pelvis. Real quick, it's basically like a bucket. You have two crests, the iliac crests coming down like this. You have a little bit of a tailbone coming over, and then you have the pubic symphysis coming down like this, and it's like a bucket. So this is the pelvic bone. What I want to keep track of is the femur that comes out like this. So if we're looking at this from the front view, we have the iliac crest coming over. It dips down here, forming this V shape, and this is where the pelvis is. Now the femur is your leg bone, and I'm pretty sure it's the longest bone in your body. It juts out like this, and then juts back across like that. It has this kind of shape. Your legs are straight down, vertical, but the bones themselves have a bend to them. You have a second bone right here for two legs. And then this is where the knees are. And then you have all of this muscle dropping down. I think movement is something that's very important to understand. So let's say we have the front view. I'm gonna redraw the V. We have the femur dropping down here, the leg bone. We have the legs going down like this, right? Say we want the leg to move this way. If the leg is going to move this way, we don't want to cut the leg here and then have it move like this. That's wrong, right? There's no cut right here, right? This is not the axis that it moves from. It moves from up here. So if this leg were to rotate this way, this femur bone will have to flip and move over here and then move over here, right? There's a ball and socket joint in here. So that's what causes the movement. And then that's where you'll get this kind of movement like this. You want to keep track that the movement, that the angle of the rotation is not from over here. It's actually from inside the pelvis. The bone itself moves. And you also want to keep track that the femur shape has this great trochanter, which is right here. And then it drops down like this, right? The bone itself is bent. This is where it rotates. So then when you want to rotate it, it goes out like that. So that's the rotation. It has this bend. It keeps this bend. And that's what you want to keep track of. So if we're looking at it again, and if we want to rotate it, let's start off with the pelvis. And I want this leg to be moving out this way. This femur is going to be bending out this way and then bending out this way like this. And then you can kind of have a little bit of bunch up from the muscles, a little bit of the muscles coming out this way. So then you'll have a little bit of a bend right here. Because where this great trochanter is, there is no muscle that's directly covering it. All the muscles basically attach and come out of this great trochanter. So that's why you have a little bit of a bump right here where it's going to be. What if you want to raise your leg up? Let's look at the butt from the side view. This is side view pelvis. We can draw out the butt, right? They're a little butterfly shape, but butterfly is in perspective. Have this kind. The butt in this has a little bit of mass that drips down like this. What I like to do is have a big sphere right here to help capture this rotational movement. The great trochanter would be at the very bottom line of this box, and then it'll basically just drop down like this with a little bit of a forward curve. And then you can have your thigh coming down like this. Now say you want to rotate it up this way. The way that it's going to work is Let's put it all back. Putting it in. If we have the great trochanter here and we want to rotate it up, it's not going to be flat out like this. The bone itself is going to curve up and move to around, you know, not all the way up to the top of the box, but around here. Close. And that has to do with the head of the great trochanter, or the head of the femur, connecting to the tibia, connecting to the patella, all of that fun stuff, which I'm not going to go over because it's not about that. You just need to know that the bone actually attaches over here. This great trochanter, by the way, is not directly touching, say if this person is sitting, is not directly touching the thing that it's sitting on. There's actually the pelvis underneath it, and it's the ischium. Has a little bone underneath, and on top of that, there is some muscle around it. All that to say, though, is that you ought to put some cushioning underneath where that great trochanter is. This distance is not that long, and then you want to make sure that there's a distance from this bone down to the butt. And then you can attach the legs like so, which I'm not going to go over because that's outside the scope of what I'm talking about here. I'm focusing mainly here. So now that we have side movement and front movement, how do we simplify? The way that I like to simplify is like this. Draw a longer rectangle, split it in half, cut like this. Right here is the navel. Put two spheres right around like this. Think of joints in an action figure. If you've had dolls or action figures, they'll have, you know, balls and sockets, and then the limbs will be able to move around. And then you'll have the actual legs attached to it like this. What having this ball shape lets you do is that it lets you rotate the leg however you see fit. Now remember, this is simplifying it, so I'm not actually keeping track of all the anatomy, but we know that there's a bone here that's rotating it like this. But for construction purposes, we can think of it like there's a gap in here, and this cylinder is just rotating around this sphere like this. The pelvis itself is a solid looking structure, and then you can have your balls move around like this, and then the balls can have its omnidirectional movement however they want. That's kind of how I want to think about it. But now let's move on to anatomy. We have all the pieces, right? So we figured out the butterfly, we have the bone, and then we have the construction. We have these three things. Now we just need to add in a little bit more anatomy, as in muscles, and then we have all the pieces that we need to put it all together. What is the anatomy? Let's start with our side view. We draw the side view the same way. We can put in the sphere. We know great trochanter would be around here, and then the bone is dropping down like this. How are the butt muscles actually working? Well, if you've seen arms, if you've drawn arms before, you know about the deltoid shape. There are three heads to the deltoid, and it drops down. This is the elbow. For the leg, it's very similar. We have this great trochanter here. All of these muscles, there's three of them, are going to attach to the great trochanter. They come from the iliac crest, which is your pelvis, right? You'll see on models and real life people, and you can feel on yourself, there's a bone, your hip bones on the top end, right where your belly button would be, or on the same level as your belly button. There's this ridge, that's the iliac crest, and then the butt bones, or the butt muscles, will all come down from here. So there's three. Let's go over all of them. Your butt, we all know as the gluteus maximus. The middle part would be the gluteus medius. And then this first one is going to be called the tensor fascia latae. I don't know how to spell it. Fascia with an I. Tensor fascia latae. And then we have the iliotibial band, which is an actual, like a tendon that drops down and attaches to your knee. So we have these three muscles. This is the front. This is where the leg is facing. And then it drops down like that. So you have all of this all coming down and wrapping around the great trochanter. That's why I think the great trochanter for me is one of my favorite bony landmarks on the body. So that we have all of this from the butt. So let's look at it from the back actually. We have the sacral triangle, And then we have the butt. So this main butterfly, we're going back to the butterfly. This whole butterfly is going to be the gluteus maximus. We have the gluteus medius, and then we have the tensor fascia latae coming out, and then we have the great trochanter over here. Everything's kind of wrapping in like this, and then it drops down. But this big muscle here, this is the gluteus maximus, and then there's two of them, which creates this butterfly shape. But that's kind of what you want to think about when you're going. All of these muscles are all dipping into this great trochanter. The great trochanter is a good landmark and attaches to the femur, and then the femur attaches to the head of the femur, and then the head of the femur would be the pivot for where the legs move. Now let's look at some example drawings. Let's just draw and talk through. So how do we construct the hips and the pelvis and the movement? So let's start with a simple box. The angle of the box reveals the angle of the pelvis. So in this case, it's pointing downward like this. Let's split the box in half. And then let's cut everything up like this. Nice. Let's draw through so that we can see the other side. And then we put in our spheres. At this point, we don't really have to do any anatomy at the moment. We can first just put in and block in our main sort of gestures for everything. I'm just going to do one leg for now. So where would the great trochanter be? The great trochanter would be along this bottom line over here. And let's start adding in our anatomy. So we have over here, this is the iliac crest. This is subcutaneous, which means there's no muscles covering it. You can feel it on your own body, this bone. And then we have the muscles dropping down. So we would start putting down the lines. So over here, we're kind of building out the gluteus medius. Gluteus maximus is coming from the bottom and it's dipping under like this. And then the tensor fascia latae would be around this corner, and then it'll wrap around like this. It's the smallest. So small, medium, big. Very, very nice. Tensor fascia latae might actually stretch out a little bit because this leg is turning out this way over here. Now for this area here, we have this form, and then we have this form meeting up. This is where we can start adding in the creases. And we want to make sure that the distance from here to the bend of the leg is not too great. The leg is bending up like this. So this distance is not the greatest. Here's all of the muscles going out like this, and then we have the bone coming out like that. So that's kind of what we're doing, except in perspective. And then we can put in our contour lines, and then we have our three muscles. Draw out your box, split in half, cut them out, find the ball shape, draw lightly so that we can place everything. Leg drops down. I'll put this leg moving up just so we have some motion. Okay, now let's find the bones. If we know that the bone drops out like this and then drops down, so we have the great trochanter around here. If the great trochanter is here, we have the iliac crest, and then we have our lines dropping down. So here are our three bones. We have the three muscles. We have the tensor fascia latae, we have the gluteus medius, and then we have the gluteus maximus. And then I mentioned it before, but the iliotibial band is a tendon that drops all the way down here to the knee. We can have that to help capture the flow of everything. And then we have the leg dropping down like this. We can look at it one more time. We have a box. We have our spheres. We have our leg position. Always go from big shapes to small shapes. We have our iliac crest dropping down here to where the pubic symphysis is, where our crotch is. We can kind of mark that out right here. And then we have our great trochanter. And then now we got to just put all the muscles around it. So we have tensor fascia latae dropping out over here from the front. This would be the belly button. Over here we have the gluteus medius. And then we have the gluteus maximus, the butt, dropping down like this. It goes kind of underneath the great trochanter. And then we have the leg like this. And then if you want to build up, we can extend this rectangle, this box, higher to include external obliques, the abs. Let's do one more angle, this time from more of like the back view. I'm going to put a box like this, put the spheres like this, so it's kind of facing away like that. a butt pointed towards us. And then we have 2 legs dropping down like this. So now that I have this kind of sketched out, let's start adding in the anatomy. So first, I want to find the sacral triangle, which will help me locate everything. There's this triangle, we all have it. You can even feel it, but if you have someone to see who will show you their sacral triangle, you can ask them to look at it. So then we have our butterfly shape, but in this angle, it's not really gonna look like a butterfly, but it'll be something like this. This is all gluteus maximus, by the way, because guess what? Our great trochanter is right here. Gluteus maximus covers the entire butt like this. And then we have gluteus medius over here on the side. And then we have tensor fascia latae right up here near the front. And then we have the leg dropping down like this, the second leg. So all of this would be gluteus maximus, and then gluteus medius, tensor fascia latae. And then we have the torso extending out like that. Also always remember to have your contour lines wrapping around so that you see the form of everything.